Last summer I went camping with my friend Alex and our medium-sized dog, Rocky, near a stream in a well-known part of the nearby national forest. We found a nice spot to set up. It wasn't an official campground, but it had a place to park, a circle for a campfire, and a flat area next to the stream. In the middle of the night, we were suddenly awakened by the sound of a large truck parked next to our car, its engine running. Eventually, 3 men stepped out of the truck. They walked into our campsite. They spoke in low voices, and the noise of the truck by the stream made it hard to hear what they were saying. I had a bad feeling about this. Meanwhile, Rocky had been growling softly the entire time. Right away, I whispered to Alex to stay quiet, hold Rocky, and hide. I got out of our sleeping bag and hurriedly put on my shoes. The only thing I had for protection was a forest axe, bigger than a hatchet but smaller than a typical axe. It was essential for managing in the woods. The axe was covered with a leather sheath, secured by a metal button to keep the blade safe. The men lingered around, maybe trying to scare us. I decided to make a bold move. I snapped the metal button off the sheath loudly, pulling it off, ready to defend ourselves if necessary. All 3 men heard the click. They might have thought it was a gun being prepared because they quickly left the camp, jumped into their truck, and drove away without another word. So to those eerie men who invaded our campsite in the dead of night for who knows what, I'm truly relieved we never actually met, and I hope we never do, ever. I live in a city encircled by a forest of pine trees, an area designated by those who designed the city as a conservation zone. Near where I reside, there's a forested area that's just about a 10-minute walk from the city center. This place is one of my favorite spots, although lately I've been quite anxious about venturing there alone. Generally, our city is considered very safe, and I often walked in the forest alone at night without any trouble. To get to the forest, I walk through a park with a playground at the end of a quiet street, and then climb a long set of steps. It's a rather hidden place. I own 2 dogs. One is older and now moves slowly because of arthritis, and the other is just a year old, full of energy. Since the younger dog needs a lot of exercise, I often take them out in the evening for a run. On this particular evening, it was just after work in the middle of winter, so it was already dark. The weather was terrible, almost stormy, and it was raining, but the dense trees offered some shelter from the rain. When we reached the forest, I let my dogs off their leashes. We encountered a few other dog walkers braving the bad weather as well. As we walked, I noticed a man sitting alone on a bench ahead on the path. He wore dark blue track pants and a leather jacket over a hooded jersey. His head was bowed, staring at the ground, and his hood covered his face. The sight of him sitting there in the rain gave me an uneasy feeling. I tried to dismiss my discomfort, thinking he might just be another person out for a walk, but something about him made me wary. A few moments later, my older dog turned, looked at something behind us, and then suddenly took off towards the playground, clearly frightened. She had never run off like that before, and the younger dog quickly followed her. I called for them to come back, but they were already out of sight. The younger dog returned when I called, but seemed confused, running ahead and then coming back as if unsure of what to do. That's when I turned around and saw the same man, now a bit closer behind me on the trail. Feeling a mix of fear about the strange man and worry for my dog who had vanished, I decided to take a shortcut. The path I was on looped around, but there was another trail below that led straight back to the playground. Carefully, I climbed down the steep bank to the lower track and started to hurry after my dog. I couldn't run because of my bad back, but I walked as quickly as I could. The trail was muddy and slippery, making it hard to walk fast. By now, it was very dark outside. When I finally got close to the steps leading out of the forest, I saw both of my dogs sitting there. They rushed up to me, obviously happy to see me. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. But when I turned around, the man was unexpectedly close behind me. He must have run or followed me down the bank to catch up so quickly. I knew I needed to get to a place with more people around, so I hurried down the steps as quickly as my aching back allowed. At the bottom of the steps, I quickly put the leashes back on my dogs. To my surprise, the younger dog began to growl, a sound I had never heard from him before. I looked back and saw the man halfway down the steps. He paused when our eyes met, then bent down to tie his shoes. With my dog still growling, I kept my eyes on the man. He gave me a long, unsettling stare, then turned and walked back up the steps, disappearing into the dark forest. Although nothing terrible happened, the incident left me shaking with adrenaline. I shuddered to think what might have occurred if I hadn't had my dogs with me. The younger one showed his protective side, unlike the older one who was no help in that situation. I felt immensely relieved that we were safe, but the encounter left me deeply shaken. This story took place around 5 years back. After finishing college, I was eager to make a good impression at my new job. I made it a point to be the last one to leave the office, hoping my boss would notice my dedication. This habit often meant driving home in the darkness of the night. One evening, as I was driving home, I realized my car's gas was nearly empty. Fortunately, I spotted a 7-Eleven on the right side of the road, still open for customers. Even though I drove this route almost every day, I had never stopped at that particular store before. I pulled into the station and began filling my gas tank. The area was unusually quiet, and I seemed to be the only customer around. The only other sign of activity was the bright light shining from the store across the parking lot. Suddenly the gas pump clicked loudly, signaling it was full. I glanced at my watch. It was 9:45 p.m. I really should leave work earlier, I murmured to myself. Yawning widely, I walked toward the store to pay. As I got closer, the large glass doors of the store slid open automatically. I entered, looking around. Surprisingly, the place was completely deserted. I paused by the door, expecting someone to appear from the back room. Having worked late nights in retail myself, I understood the routine well. After standing in the empty store for a bit, I began walking toward the counter, still expecting to see someone who worked there appear at any moment. I reached the counter and scanned the area. "Hello, is anyone there? I need to pay for my gas," I called out, hoping to catch the attention of a hidden employee. I thought maybe the usual high school students who manned the store were just being slow tonight. But then, my eyes caught sight of something alarming. There, on the counter, were 2 small, bright red stains that looked like blood. Something was definitely wrong. Just then, a man emerged from the back. He was a rough-looking guy in his 40s, not at all the teenager I was expecting. He walked up to the register and casually covered the red stains with his left hand. "Can I help you, sir?" he mumbled in a low voice. Yes, I just need to pay for my gas," I replied, feeling a bit uneasy. I had a strange feeling about this man. He didn't seem like he belonged here. But I figured the safest option was to just pay and then leave quickly, maybe even call the police from the road. Sure," he muttered. He began to fumble with the register, clearly unsure of how it worked. A bead of sweat rolled down his forehead as he looked up at me. "What do you know?" he asked in a rough tone. "Nothing," I answered quickly. "I just want to pay and leave." "I'm afraid it's too late for that," he said darkly. Then, chillingly, he pulled a gun and aimed it right at me. My body froze and I raised my hands up high. I didn't plead for my life. Words just failed me. "It's not personal," he said with a cold laugh. "Any last words?" Suddenly a gunshot rang out, but not from his gun. The man fell to the ground in front of me. Turning around, I saw a police officer with a smoking gun. They had arrived just in time. Once things had calmed down, I talked with the officer about what had happened. "The cashier must have hit the alarm right before they were killed," the officer explained. "He saved my life and I'll never get the chance to thank him," I responded sadly. This was the closest I had ever been to death, and it made me see that there's more to life than just work. From that day on, I made sure to leave the office early enough to truly enjoy my life. After all, you never know which day could be your last. When I was in high school, a few friends and I really wanted to start working part-time. We saw it as a step towards becoming adults. At 14, finding a job was tough because many thought we were too young and unreliable. Luckily, I got an interview at a 7-Eleven close to our school and managed to get the job. I was the first one among us to start working. My shifts were right after school and lasted until 9 p.m., when the night shift workers would take over. I worked alongside a guy named Tom, who was a bit older than me. He was supposed to train me. After a few weeks, I noticed Tom liked to slack off. He often vanished for hours during our shifts. I kept quiet about it since I was new and didn't want to make a fuss. Also, working with Tom was easygoing, and I didn't want to end up with a stricter coworker. One Tuesday evening, typical of his habits, Tom had disappeared, probably to meet a girl, leaving me alone during a particularly slow night. The evening dragged on with very few customers, and I was often by myself. It had been quiet for about an hour when I began hearing strange sounds from the back room. This room stored our extra supplies, the employee bathroom, and a back exit. Initially, I thought maybe rats were making the noise, but it sounded too loud for that. Feeling uneasy, I decided to check it out to calm my nerves. I approached the door and slowly opened it, and that's when I saw someone. A young man in his early 20s was peeking out from behind a stack of boxes. His face was narrow with a deep frown, and he looked right at me without trying to hide. I froze, unable to move. Suddenly, he stepped out from behind the boxes, and I saw he had a knife in his hand. I quickly stepped back into the main part of the store. I pushed against the door with all my strength to keep it shut. He banged against the door, trying to push it open. Holding the door with one hand, I managed to dial the police with the other. Luckily, they got there in just a few minutes and caught him. When Tom came back, I was really upset with him for leaving me alone. We are supposed to work together for safety, not because it's too much work, I told him. He looked sorry and said he was really sorry. I accepted his sorry and even said it was partly my fault for letting him act like that. I later heard that the man who broke in only got 6 months in jail. In my view, that wasn't enough for what he did. That knife looked really dangerous. Maybe he made a deal with the court. I don't really know all the details about how that stuff works. I stayed at that job for another year until I found a better paying one. If you work in a store, remember it's safer to be with others. If you have the chance to work with someone else, make sure to look out for each other because you might need it when you least expect it. I remember that night when I couldn't sleep because of a scratching noise inside my room. I wiped my eyes, sat up in bed, and listened closely. The noise seemed to be coming from the walls, and it moved around. As a curious kid, I got out of bed to trace the sound. It led me down the hallway. My mom and dad were sleeping, so I walked on tiptoes. I followed the noise all the way to the basement. When I reached the basement door, I went downstairs and found the scratching coming from a small space I hadn't noticed before. It was a little square hole in the wall with a tiny door that was partly open. Since I had already come this far, I decided to keep going. I was really curious, so I knelt down and squeezed into the space. Inside it was tight and dark, but I kept moving forward until the scratching stopped. I stopped too, puzzled, waiting for the noise to start again, but it was silent. Just when I thought I had imagined everything, I heard a tiny squeak behind me and spun around. I was terrified to see a bunch of rats blocking my way back. They were huge, ugly rats with bright red eyes and long, sharp teeth. I screamed loudly and kept crawling deeper into the tunnel as the rats chased after me, their teeth clicking close behind. I didn't know where to go, but I needed to escape. Then suddenly I hit a dead end and started crying from fear. I lay on my back and saw the rats coming closer. I lifted my feet, pulled my knees to my chest, ready to kick. "Stay away or else," I said, hoping the rats would listen and leave. But why would they be scared? Little kids in night clothes don't often visit this place, so to them, I probably looked like a big meal. I cried and shook as I lay there, my bare feet in the air, waiting for the rats to jump at me. It seemed like they were teasing me, snapping their teeth as they slowly came closer. There was no escape, and my parents were still deep in sleep upstairs. I wished I had never gone into the basement. Suddenly the rats charged at me, ready to attack. That's when everything went dark. The next thing I knew, I was back in my room. I was sweating a lot, but I wasn't hurt. I thought it was all just a horrible nightmare, but then I heard a noise from under my bed. I've been working the night shift at a 7-Eleven for about a month now. It's not the job of my dreams, but I'm grateful to have it, especially given my past. Just a few months ago, I was released from jail, and finding work after that hasn't been easy. I won't go into much detail, but it's safe to say I've made some bad choices. But life is about starting over, right? That's what I keep telling myself. On these shifts, I'm the only worker in the store, which is normal for nighttime. Typically, only a handful of customers come in each hour. When no one's around, I spend my time tidying up the shelves and killing time on my phone. The store is located in a tough part of town, and the salary isn't much to talk about. But the best part about this place is its top-notch security system. There are high-quality cameras everywhere. My boss put them in after a robbery happened before I started working here. I usually find myself standing at the counter, eyes glued to the monitor. I've always been like that. If there's a screen in front of me, I can't help but watch. It doesn't even matter what's showing. Maybe it's because I used to watch too much TV when I was a kid. I'm not sure. But I quickly forgot about the screen when a man walked into the store. The automatic doors slid open, and in came a very tall, skinny man wearing a long, flowing coat. His skin was gray and looked like old paper, all cracked and wrinkled. He had a look of pain on his face that you couldn't miss. He moved slowly through the door and came up to the counter where I was standing, frozen in shock. "Hello, sir? How can I help you today?" I tried to sound normal, as if he was just another customer. He didn't speak. He just looked at me with his red, tired eyes. Oddly, he seemed familiar, like I had seen him before. But I was sure I would remember meeting someone who looked like he could be death walking. We just stood there looking at each other for what felt like forever. He didn't move at all. To try and ease the weird silence, I glanced at the security screen. My heart dropped when I saw that the man wasn't in the video. On the screen, it was just me, standing alone at the counter. But when I looked up, he was definitely still there, staring right at me, his face hauntingly familiar. His skin looked like it was drooping off his bones. I must be seeing things, I thought. This can't be real. I shut my eyes tight, hoping he would vanish. But when I opened them, he was closer, his hands on the counter, looking into my eyes more deeply than anyone ever had. It felt like he could see right through me, into my deepest fears and secrets, my past, present, and everything yet to come. It was as if he was going through my memories, replaying parts of my life. Everything paused when we got to my crime. I had been involved in a robbery, and during the getaway, my car hit someone. Feeling guilty, my body started shaking. That's when I realized why he looked so familiar. He was the person my car had hit. Just then, the man slowly faded away. Why he came, I can only guess. Maybe he needed peace, or maybe he wanted to scare me. But when he sensed my regret, maybe he decided to let me be. I can't change what I've done. All I can do is try to live better from now on. I spent a whole year traveling around Australia with just a backpack after I finished college. During that time, I had both good and bad days. I'm quite a shy person, so the social parts of traveling alone were a bit tough for me. But overall, I'd say it was a great adventure. My buddy Jack from my hometown was also exploring Australia, and we ended up crossing paths. At this particular time, we were near the seaside in a little town called Coral Cove. We chose to camp out because we already had our tents and gear, and it was cheaper. Paying $20 a night for a hostel bed seemed too much for us. Coral Cove is a popular spot that most travelers seem to visit. The place is not only stunningly beautiful, but it's also known for its lively nightlife, which attracts a lot of young people. I wasn't really into the party scene, but I tried to mingle more back then. One evening, Jack and I decided to hit a bar. It was about a 45-minute walk on mostly rural roads to get to the town center. Luckily, we got there before it got dark since the roads had no lights. But we didn't think about how we'd get back later on. Not very smart of us. We ended up drinking so-so beer and dealing with music that was just too loud for my liking. When we left, it was past midnight. Obviously, it was too dark to walk back the same way we came. After talking it over, we figured since our campsite was on the beach, we could just follow the shoreline until we saw the bright neon sign above the entrance. We could have taken a cab, but we were both too cheap to spend the money. Plus, the beach looked magical in the moonlight, and it seemed like a perfect idea at the time. We had been walking for about half an hour on a part of the beach that wasn't very busy. That's why it was so odd to see something in the water. It was hard to see clearly, but it looked like a person standing far out in the sea. I thought my eyes were fooling me. I don't believe in ghosts or anything like that, so I wasn't scared. The idea of a criminal hiding in the ocean waiting to hurt someone passing by seemed too strange and unlikely to be truly frightening. My mind was clearly playing tricks on me. The mix of the alcohol and being tired made me see things that weren't real. To calm myself down, I asked Jack, "Do you see that?" "See what?" he answered. I pointed towards where I thought I saw a man standing in the water, about 100 or 200 meters away from the shore. "I don't think so," he said quietly. It was so far away that we couldn't be sure if we really saw anything. We continued walking, and a minute later Jack said, "Oh, now I see it. It does look like a guy standing in the ocean." With that, I knew it wasn't just my imagination. There really was something there. We both saw it. With each step we took, it became more obvious. We could see the outline of a man standing waist-deep in the water, his long shadow stretching towards us under the bright moonlight. We should have turned back, but we were too curious. If there were such things as ghosts, we wanted to find out. As we got closer, our hearts beat faster. It was clear now. We were staring at a dark figure shaped like a man. As we got near, he turned and spoke to us. "How you going, mates?" said the man as he adjusted his fishing pole. Shocked by a mix of relief and confusion, Jack managed to say, "Good, yeah. I guess the best fish come out at night," I added. We looked at each other, embarrassed by how scared we had been. We laughed a bit as we walked the rest of the way to the campsite. I've always thought of myself as a logical person who needs proof to believe in anything unusual. For a few moments, though, I doubted everything I believed about the world. And while I wouldn't say I'm now a believer, I'm starting to understand why some people are. I live in a small town in the countryside of Ohio, where it rains quite often. Because of all this rain, there are many little ponds and streams around. I really like to check them out and catch fish. We had a tiny pond right in our backyard that was full of fish of all sizes. One morning I woke up to find that most of the fish were gone. The few that were left were crowded together in the deepest part of the pond. The mud at the bottom of the pond looked as if something had dug through it. It seemed clear that some creature had done this. My father thought maybe a bird was to blame, but being only 13 years old, my mind raced with thoughts of creatures like the Loch Ness Monster or Bigfoot. I was determined to figure out what had happened. The next morning, I packed my bag with all sorts of fishing bait. I threw in some towels and goggles too, just in case I decided to take a dip in the water. There was a thick line of trees bordering our land that I was always told not to go beyond. Despite the warnings, my curiosity got the better of me. I felt a mix of fear and excitement as I approached the forbidden part of the woods. Each step seemed to echo in my mind, warning me of the unknown dangers lurking beyond. The morning mist hung low around the trees, making the whole scene look like something out of a scary movie. I could hear the distant sound of water trickling and the occasional rustle of leaves. It felt as though every noise was amplified in the silence of the forest. As I got closer to the tree line, my heart pounded harder. I reminded myself to stay alert for any signs of the mysterious creature that might have disturbed our pond. I couldn't shake off the eerie feeling that I was being watched, and every shadow seemed to hide a secret. With a deep breath, I stepped past the trees into the area I had never explored before, ready to uncover whatever secrets it held. This time, however, I chose to ignore the rules. I crossed the line of trees because there was another pond on the far side that I had never tried fishing in before. This adventure thrilled me, and I wondered if perhaps I might encounter the mysterious creature that had visited our own pond. It was already 4 p.m., and the sun would set around 6 p.m. Even so, I was determined to go. I figured it would take about 25 minutes to walk there and back, so time was tight. When I reached the pond, a wave of excitement washed over me. Unlike the ponds I was used to, fish here were leaping out of the water actively. I quickly set down my gear, eager to start fishing, but suddenly the water calmed, and a chilling feeling crept over me. At first I thought my shadow had startled the fish, but then I noticed something large moving swiftly in the water, and I instinctively stepped back. Living far from other people, it would be unusual for an alligator to be here. I saw something that looked like a huge tail, but not a normal one. It was oddly forked and thick, seeming useful for both swimming and walking on land. It emerged briefly from the water, then plunged back down. This pond was linked to the outside by 3 small creeks, making it possible for larger fish to enter. Driven by curiosity, I decided to put on my goggles and take a closer look underwater. The pond was clearer than most I'm used to, and what I saw next made my skin crawl. Underneath, there were 6 dark creatures, each measuring between 4 and 7 feet long. I leapt back in shock, gasping for air, when one of them surfaced. It had pitch-black eyes and glossy black skin, with odd bumps covering its lower body. I feared it would attack, but as I backed toward the shore, the other creatures began retreating into the creeks, leaving the pond. The one that had watched me turned slowly and followed the others. I felt fortunate to have escaped unharmed. Whatever those creatures were, they were unlike anything known to man. It's clear there are still undiscovered beings in this world, and I hope not to meet another. Last night, just before 11 p.m., I decided to take a walk around my neighborhood. I always considered my town to be a safe place, so I wasn't worried about anything bad happening. I had only been walking for about 5 minutes when I noticed a woman on the opposite side of the street. She had pale skin, blonde hair, and was wearing a white dress. She seemed to be about my height and looked as if she could be the same age as me. At first, I didn't really keep an eye on her, but after I finished walking around the block, there she was again, just a few steps ahead of me. She stood by the sidewalk, just staring at the traffic on the busy main road. I greeted her with a hello, and she turned to look at me. It was dark and I couldn't see her face clearly, but her eyes seemed odd. They had no color or pupils, just blank stares. I felt a chill, but asked her if she was all right. She didn't reply. Instead, she just pointed towards the road. I didn't understand what she meant, and before I could ask again, she stepped right in front of an oncoming car. Amazingly, when the car hit her, there was no sound, no crash, nothing. The driver, a young man probably in his mid-20s, stopped immediately and got out, clearly shaken. We talked about what had just happened, both of us freaking out. He called the police, and I walked around the car to see where the woman was. But when I got to the other side, she was gone. And I mean completely gone. Not like she had been killed or anything. Even stranger, there was no blood on the ground anymore, though the car still showed signs of the red paint that looked like blood. The police arrived soon after and dismissed the whole thing as a prank by some kids, with one of them possibly playing along. They tested the red substance on the car and confirmed it was just paint. They closed the case, but I couldn't shake off what I had seen. I don't usually believe in ghosts or anything supernatural, but this incident left me puzzled. I'm not sure I ever want to understand what happened that night. Sometimes I think some mysteries are better left unsolved. Every day I drive down a road near my home. It's an old, worn path that seems stuck between being a dirt track and a paved road. It's as if it was paved years ago, but time has turned it back to gravel. I live just off this road, so I use it to go almost everywhere. To work, to buy groceries, and for all my other errands. I'm a single woman living by myself in a pretty quiet rural area. Some might think that's odd, but I've always liked doing things on my own, and I'm stronger than I might seem. The only notable place around here is a small 7-Eleven store where I often go. One evening, coming back from work, I decided to stop there to fill up my car. As I pulled into the parking lot, I spotted a dark black pickup truck that I hadn't seen around before. It had deep tinted windows and unusually large custom wheels. I didn't really pay much attention to it at the time. Seeing new vehicles isn't a common thing here since we're a small, close community, but it does happen now and then. I parked at a gas pump and started filling up my car. That's when a man walked over from the truck. He was a bit older, probably in his 50s, wearing a clean button-down shirt and ripped jeans. It was a strange mix, really. I didn't let it bother me. I just kept my focus on filling up my car. From the corner of my eye, I could see that he maintained a distance of about 10 feet from me and seemed to be watching me. I wasn't sure what he wanted, so I chose to ignore him. After I finished filling up, I paid for the gas and quickly drove off. Halfway to my home, I glanced in my rearview mirror and noticed the truck following me. I couldn't make out the driver, but I was certain it was the same truck from the 7-Eleven. A wave of fear washed over me when I realized he was trailing me, especially since we were getting closer to where I lived. I can't let him find out where I live, I whispered to myself in a panic. Desperate, I turned onto a random side road to see if he would still follow. To my dismay, he did. He kept a distance of about 5 cars' length from me, but it was enough to keep my heart pounding. Once we were on the main road again, I made up my mind to drive to the police station, hoping that would deter him. As I got closer to the station, the truck pulled away and disappeared into the distance. Even though he didn't do anything outright, the encounter left me shaken, so I decided to report it to the police. The officer at the station is a friend of mine. I give piano lessons to his son. He was really understanding and took my concerns seriously. However, he mentioned that without more to go on, there wasn't much they could do. We couldn't be sure what the man's intentions were. He might have just been a lonely guy who didn't know how to interact properly. Or it could have been something far more sinister. Since that day, I haven't seen him again, and I truly hope it stays that way. I'm a 15-year-old guy from Ireland named Finn. I'm currently in my 3rd year at a local high school. At the beginning of my 2nd year, we had a new student from Portugal named Mateo. Since I was assigned to show him around, we quickly became close friends. Mateo always carried a unique, small, bright red backpack. He's slightly shorter than I am, with short, dark brown hair. Remember this, as it's key to the story later. One day during a school break, I was heading to where my friends and I usually hang out, near our lockers in the hallway. As I turned a corner, I spotted Mateo walking ahead. It struck me as odd because from where I was, I should have seen him come up the stairs to get to that part of the building. Confused, I sped up to catch him. Just as he was about to round another corner, I followed right behind him. But when I turned the corner myself, he was gone. There was just a staircase going back down, and 2 restrooms, one for boys and one for girls, but no sign of Mateo. Given how closely I was trailing him, he would have had to run and jump down the stairs or dash into a restroom to disappear so quickly. If he had taken the stairs, I would have definitely heard him, so I assumed he must be in the restroom. I sat down on a nearby bench to wait. Shortly after, Mateo appeared, rounding the corner and setting down his backpack. I then realized he hadn't come from the restroom. "Did you just come from that way?" I asked. "No, I was at the gym," he replied. The gym was actually in the opposite direction, and he had no reason to lie about it. "I know what you're thinking, that it was someone else," he said. "But the person I saw had the exact same build as Mateo, and nobody else at our school has a bag like his. Besides, the only way he could have gone without me noticing was into the restroom, and I saw that no one came out who hadn't gone in first. Plus, Mateo has a very distinct look. Not many here match his build. While this might not be the scariest story ever, I can't help but think it was some kind of strange slip in reality.